fine. How are you doing?
Um,
It's a
Overwhelmed.
complicated question.
Yeah, I'm like, I think
Yeah.
I'm mostly overwhelmed and exhausted. Yeah, it's just, I think it's a lot to take in. And,
Yeah.
we are two parents, a two-parent household with two businesses, so two entrepreneurs and two
Wow.
kids. And I feel like we're just, and we both work in the restaurant tech world, right? So we have
Wow.
all of that to manage, like the kids and like being an entrepreneur as it is, but then like seeing if we're still going to have businesses at the end of all of this.
I know.
So it's an interesting and weird, tough time for everybody. I think the only
Yeah.
silver lining that we all have is that we're all kind of in it together,
I know.
but doing our best. So yeah.
Yeah. And I've been so inspired by you. You jumped to action to mobilize and help restaurants and small businesses right when this happened. And so why don't you start by telling people who you are and about
Yeah.
Food to Eat and Bikky and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So hi guys, I'm Deepti Sharma. I'm the founder of two companies and two humans. My first company, my first baby, is Food to Eat. So when we're not in a pandemic, we partner with immigrant women and minority-owned restaurants, essentially to help them book catering opportunities at large corporate offices. The idea is how do we help them book more of these opportunities with big corporations that they generally don't have access to, while getting corporations to think about diversity and inclusion through the lens of food.
Yeah.
And so that's our big, great mission there. And it was like, when Amazon first said that they were going to work from home, I had a feeling that like shit was about to hit the fan. And so we knew that everyone would start canceling. But we didn't think we would be in this big of a predicament. We thought that like, okay, we would have to like figure things out, but not to the extent where we're at zero revenue, which is where we're at today. So that's my first company. And the second company, Bikky, on a normal day, we're CRM for restaurants. So we essentially help restaurants take a look at all of their data, bring it into one place, and then use that data and market to their customers better. So essentially, like I feel like a lot of people when they're being marketed from restaurants are sending them things like, we haven't seen you in a while. Come in and get a free coffee, or look at our meat selection of sandwiches. And I'm like, I'm a vegetarian, and you should know that by my data. Like you should know that by everything I've ever ordered. So why are you still not targeting me in the right way? And so we want to be able to allow restaurants to better engage, better understand who their customers are, and then send them things that actually make sense for them. And so for us, with Food to Eat, the first thing we thought of was like, all right, we know every single one of our restaurant partners is going to be in trouble right now. What can we do? What can we ask our community to help us with? And so we started a fundraiser on March 14th on the Saturday. And we essentially have raised over $12,000 now. And what we want to do with that money is purchase meals from the restaurants so that the restaurants have some business, and then take those meals and then deliver them to food insecure neighborhoods and communities.
Wow.
So we're going to be donating the first few meals this next week. So we have hospitals, like we're looking at public hospitals or hospitals essentially that have, not a lot of resources and money. Right now I feel like all of the people that I know are like, I'm donating to Columbia and NYU. And it's like, those are great hospitals. Everybody is in need. Everyone is in short of resources. But I just want to make sure that we're looking at places that are being hit really hard, like Queens and Brooklyn. And then they don't have access, right? They're not private hospitals that have boards that are raising a ton of money.
No.
And so we wanted to be able, so I started reaching out to friends that were residents or doctors.
Oh, that's so good.
As access points.
I might be able to help with that because my husband works at Woodhull.
Okay. Yeah.
And then one of my best friends is a nurse midwife at Elmhurst. So
Elmhurst is like, we'd love. They're going through a lot right now, and a friend of ours is who works at Pierre Moss. Pierre Moss is a fashion brand. They're actually working to help get masks delivered to hospitals. So I've just been reaching out to them and saying like, hey, here's another connection that I found you can donate to, because everyone's what's great about New York is I feel like I've seen everybody just get up and do what they can.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the most important thing we can all do.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, for Food to Eat, those are our efforts, right? We started going to our companies and saying, hey, would you guys, you guys slashed your budgets with us and canceled everything. Would you want to donate? And it was just taking more time with corporates. So that's where we were like, you know what, forget it. Let's just start a fundraiser for individuals. And then the corporations will see that it's important to, because with corporations, there's always this red tape. They're like, oh, we don't know where we should be putting our dollars. Everyone's trying to donate to really large food banks. And I think that's great. But I think that like doing stuff more locally so that we can see action, we can see that money being spent immediately is more
Yeah.
important than like, if we think about these larger places, when is that money going to get funneled down?
Yeah, of course. And especially because the businesses that you support are largely immigrant run, women
Yeah.
run, and run by people of color. It's so important that we support. And you wrote this on the Bikky website, our local economy right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you retooled Bikky just this week, right? And I
Yeah.
want to talk about that so that everyone here can go on there and order food. And can you talk about what you and your husband did this week?
Yeah, so we were talking last week, just the same time that we started doing with Food to Eat. My husband came to me and was like, we will also be in like, we're also going to be in a place where we don't know where our business will be, but here's a quick idea, and I think we can do this within a few days. So within 4 days, we created eat.bikky.com. That's BIKKY. And essentially what we're doing there is we're aggregating data of restaurants that have their own platforms to order from. So if you go to, for example, I don't know, bearburger.com, you can order directly from Bear Burger. And so what we're doing is we're aggregating information from restaurants in New York. And so right now, mostly New York. We just launched Chicago today, and we're trying to make it national. Yeah, like the idea is like we have to aggregate as much of the data as we can. And the reason why we're promoting people ordering directly is because companies like Seamless and Grubhub are taking ridiculously high fees. And what they've done right now with this, and this started pissing us off even more because we have family that work in restaurants, and we started seeing what their contracts started looking like. And so in those contracts, Grubhub essentially said, we'll defer the fees that we normally take till I think March 31st. And then we'll like basically defer means we're going to give you a bill in a month or two. And so we don't know where the restaurant industry is going to be. If you're going to help, we get that you as a business need to survive. And you can always, like, I think there's better ways of doing it, right? You can say something like, how about we'll charge 5% or 10% because we need at least that much to survive ourselves. But we understand that you're going through a tough time. But what's crazy is that they were even asking the restaurants to sign. So if you signed that contract that you would take the deferred fees, they would make you sign a year contract so you couldn't separate yourself from them. So like even in that craziness, they're trying to make you sign a contract.
Yeah. They're taking advantage of the desperation that small businesses are going to feel right now. Yeah, in order to be accessible. And so what you've done with Bikky is make it super accessible. You can go on, everyone, it's eat.bikky.com, right?
Yeah.
And you can go on and you can type in your zip code and you can see who around you is delivering right now and order directly from these restaurants that need our help so desperately. It's so important, Deepti. That's so awesome. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, the only advice I give to everybody is honestly just take a look at your community right now. And I give the same advice every day, whether we're in a pandemic or not, but like look at what's happening in your community. Right now, the safest thing for you to do is stay inside. But you can, there's ways to understand through social media, even like who's in need, what's happening. Doctors are posting stories and videos of like the crazy shit that they're going through, right? There are reporters that are out there. So call them, ask them what they need. And, don't simply donate food for the sake of donating. Ask them if they actually need it. My brother works at a hospital. I said, do you guys need food? He's like, no, we're fine. We need more masks. So I've started asking people, okay, where can we get masks? Like, can we get them delivered to these few hospitals in these certain areas and this and that? And so I think that's also important. And because we all feel helpless, right? Especially because we can't go outside. And, after a natural disaster, that's what we do. After 9/11, people went to places where they needed to be. And so I think that like the safest thing is stay home. We need to bring the curve down. And then the next best thing you can do is, just look at what's happening in your community, talk to people, ask them what they need help with, offer pro bono services, right? I had somebody reach out to me. It was like, hey, we can create an advertisement for you. And I was like, cool, because I can't ever do that on my own. And so maybe you can help us like create more content around the work we're trying to do. So I think we all have ways that we can contribute, but we're just kind of figuring it out for ourselves, because this is, like week 2 of everything that we're all going through.
And to talk more about what these small businesses, these restaurants, many of whom are mom and pop shops and have one location and have really work week to week. Can you talk about what they need right now and how we can best support them from afar or not so far if we're ordering in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know a lot of people have been trying to do gift cards, and I initially was saying yes, gift cards as well. But the more I've thought about it, I think gift cards are kind of dangerous, or dinner bonds, or dollar bonds, or whatever they've been calling it. It's because, so right now you're giving them a bit of cash flow, but then in 3 months, if you're going back to use that gift card, what happens, right? We don't actually know where restaurants are going to be. And I know people aren't doing it. Some people aren't really doing it with the intention of like, oh yeah, I'm going to use this gift card in 3 months, but some people are, right? And so I think that comes with the danger of, it's just long term. It's just not very helpful. So I think whatever if that restaurant has a GoFundMe page, just go to that versus the gift card, right? And think about like ordering in now so that you give them cash flow, and saying like, you'll pay extra for whatever, you'll pay for their delivery fee, tip more. People constantly think that restaurant owners are rich, and they're not. There are a lot of them are mom and pops that have taken their own savings and put them into their business. They work week to week. I mean, that's why you see the largest restaurant chains like Union Square Hospitality Group, they've shut down because it's not like they have this immense amount of money that they can just keep around to like pay everyone continuously. They're waiting for government relief. And that's why I think today, if you can spend for the restaurant, spend there. If not, call Congress, right? Call your local elected officials and ask for a real restaurant bailout. Keep asking for more for restaurants, because there are lots of minimum wage workers that have lost everything. And when you work on $15 an hour, which honestly, $15 an hour isn't even the minimum wage everywhere. When you work on any kind of minimum wage, you're not really saving. Think about it. People I know that are, single family homes that make $60,000, $70,000 are telling me that that's not enough for them. And there's people on minimum wage raising families of 2 or 3 on that. So we need to be mindful of all of that, and just like really make sure that we, don't allow just the airlines and the cruise lines to be able to get, these bailouts, but restaurants need it. We're too small, too small to fail. It's important. So just, I think raising awareness, and the more we understand that restaurants need a voice, because we don't have, restaurants don't have lobbyists running around as much as the airlines do or the cruise lines do. And so I think that it's really essential that we raise our voices, look at the community, look at pages of, Padma Lakshmi or Tom Colicchio, who are posting and advocating for restaurants, and making sure that we are, kind of tapping into those resources that they're providing and amplifying, their messages, because their messages are speaking to what, the industry at large really needs at this point.
Yeah, that's really, 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 really good advice. Yeah. And so before we say goodbye, what are you cooking these days? You're home, you have 2 little ones, 2 under 5, right?
Yes, I have Zubin, who is 4, and Chaitan, who's 2. 4 and 2, they'll be 4 and 2 in April and May. And it sucks because I'm like thinking about birthday parties, virtual birthday parties. It's gonna suck. But what are we cooking? We are cooking we're vegetarian, so lots of lentils, veggies, trying to keep it fun. So, like tacos and stuff like that, stuff that they can assemble on their own to keep them and like things that are easy to cut. So Zubin likes to be in the kitchen and cut. So things that are easy to cut for him is always a big thing.
And I love you on Instagram. You always share your lunches that you prepare for them.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Now those are depleted. So I feel like I need to start start sharing the meals that we're creating at home right now. And luckily I'm at home. I live in Queens, and I live not too far away from my parents. So we came here because they're in a house versus a 1-bedroom apartment. So we're here, and so we're kind of sharing the responsibility of like one meal parents make, one meal we make. So
that's helpful. I'm glad you're with your family. Good. And Deepti, thank you for coming on today. I will be sharing the whole conversation later, and it's so good to see you face to face. My heart is with you this week.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you're doing for the restaurant industry and everyone else.
Thank you. We're trying.
Yeah.
All we can do. But thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
And I'm going to be bringing on Virginia Monaco, who is a chef. Virginia Monaco is a chef that I've known for a long time. She's a dear friend, and she is going to walk us through what to do with all the things in our fridge right now. And so I am at a total loss. Hi, VA.
Hi.
Virginia. Hi. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, thanks for being on this Instagram Live to talk about cooking, because I personally know nothing, and I'm just at boxed macaroni and cheese over and over again. So first of all, how are you, and how do you answer that question?
Yeah, we're good. We're home, you know. I mean, we're trying to enjoy the kiddo time. I took your advice, and I'm joining in on happy hour.
Good. I'm so glad.
But you know, I mean, we're both good, and you know, everything's awful. It's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, but trying to stay in touch and keep busy and cook a lot of food.
Yeah, and so why don't you tell our people here who you are and what you do?
Sure. So, hi people. I'm Virginia Monaco. I came up in like New York fine dining. I'm from New York. I'm from Long Island. I never went anywhere. I was a vegetarian for a long time, which is how I started cooking, really cooking dinners for myself. But I went through like Blue Hill and Aldi La and the Vanderbilt and lots of places before doing some culinary education. And these days I kind of have just spent a lot of time trying to teach people how to cook. I feel like around, I don't know how many people experience this, but around 30, some people started getting married or having kids or deciding it was time to turn on their oven. And I was getting all these like frantic texts that are like, help, like I'm scared of chicken. What do? I can't boil water, like the whole thing. So I think cooking is fun and expressive and creative and enjoyable, and a good way to bond with people when we're loud again. So, I mean, I enjoy trying to help people gain confidence in the kitchen and actually enjoy cooking and not fear it and see it as a task, even if it takes a quarantine to do it.
And I wanted to bring you on because you have been giving really practical, brilliant tips on Facebook around what to do with all this crap in your fridge. And I've been really inspired, and I've been learning a ton. So what are some of those tips you've given us?
So I'd say some basics. So a lot of people kind of went crazy and bought like a month or two worth of food, or a lot of people find themselves like inside right now with like unfinished meal plans shoved around their freezer or their fridge, and they have a little bit of this and that. We had to even do that here. I have a pretty like large food supply, and we had to like make a plan and, you know, hunker down and figure out what we were going to eat every day. And so the first thing I did that I'd recommend is going through literally all the stuff in your fridge and your freezer and your shelves. A lot of us have time now, so we can do these things, and just make an inventory. Make like a pretty complete inventory. Like, I have pasta, I have rice, I have 2 tomatoes, I have a handful of avocados, that sort of thing. So once everything's like all laid out, what you want to attack first are the things that are going to go bad first. And I'm going to say attack, or in culinary terms, we call it process sometimes. The things that are going to go bad first, you want to process. A lot of people I read at first were like I have these 8 avocados. I have to eat them all tomorrow. And you don't actually have to do that. I mean, you can if you want to, like, if you want to, as some sort of avocado challenge. But what you can do by processing or really cooking or transforming your raw ingredients for preservation. So that means I had a bunch of avocados, for example. So I processed a bunch of guacamole, packed it all up into like serving sizes and froze it for later. We didn't like force ourselves to eat like 10 avocados at once.
You can freeze guacamole?
Yes. So a lot, you can always like Google what freezes well. It's like, I don't know, it's hit or miss on the internet. A general rule of thumb is the more moisture something has, the worse it freezes. But that's more of a texture consideration. So since this texture is already baby food because it's guacamole, it'll defrost also into kind of baby food like guacamole. If I like froze a whole avocado and took it out, it would slice into like a mealy, you couldn't like slice it, that sort of thing. Right. Like if you freeze banana puree, you can make a smoothie later. If you just freeze like a whole banana, I don't really know like what you do with that later. I mean, I guess you make another smoothie. But so things that freeze well as is tend to be low moisture. They're usually stuff like bread. Meat does change its texture after it's frozen, but you kind of like gotta do a lot of times. And high moisture things, like think of like an apple or lettuce. If you froze that and then unfroze it, it would just be like horrible. So you have to transform those things ahead of time. So if you have too many apples and you don't want to force yourself to eat a bunch of apples, you could like always make apple pie. Pie is always a good solution to life's problems. But you can also do something like peel them, cook them, and make applesauce, and then the applesauce freezes much better than like apples.
Right.
So inventory, process what's fresh, and then sort of have a few fridge cleaning meals in mind that are good for like any sort of protein and any sort of veg. So what we've been doing here a little bit is like a stir fry is like a classic example of that. Like chicken, beef, pork, tofu, anything works in a stir fry. Tons of veg work in a stir fry. If you have soy sauce and sriracha, which I know you do, then you're 90% of the way to a stir fry already. Rice is a shelf-stable ingredient. A lot of those are selling out right now, but we're in whoever's in New York at least. A note about the grocery stores, just so you guys know, I can see a couple levels up on the supply chain, and everything is still fine. Like, anything that's missing on the shelves is still like an overbuying thing. And when that people,
talk a little bit about the supply chain thing. Like, I know nothing about this. Where do you see a supply chain?
Well, I have some wholesale licenses, so like I can buy food directly from, say, Baldor, who's like trucks you see everywhere. They're the people that sell to restaurants and then and grocery stores. So like, if they're out of something, they're a bit of like the canary in the coal mine that the grocery store or the restaurant's not going to be able to get it. And they still have everything. And the sort of irony right now, if you go to a grocery store, is with the exception of occasionally potatoes or onions, but those are even the shelf-stable equivalents in vegetables. The only things missing are shelf-stable things. The fresh line is staying okay. Like, sometimes it's going a bit, depression, where maybe you can't get eggplant and zucchini. They only have eggplant or zucchini, that kind of thing. But the whole point of hoarding shelf-stable stuff is because you're anticipating you won't be able to get fresh stuff soon. Right. And we're not really seeing that. So if you know how to cook and you're comfortable with using fresh ingredients and maybe shopping once a week or something, there's still plenty of stuff out there. And that's why sort of fridge cleaning recipes are good. Like, maybe you don't go out to the store determined to make a boneless, skinless chicken breast stir fry with baby bok choy. Maybe you're just making a stir fry and you pick out the best meat available, the best veg available. But there'll always be something that works in a stir fry, or there'll always be something that works in like a quesadilla. Tortillas freeze really well. They're low space, that sort of thing. What else? Things like chili, soups, that sort of stuff. Always. So you want to think, when you head out to the store these days, you want to think of things with flexible ingredients. You don't want to like necessarily recreate like Julia Child's Coco Vaughn right now. Although if you can find all those things, why not? But don't have your heart set on it because they might not have chicken legs that day. Chicken has been the hardest fresh thing to get that I've seen.
Really?
Everything else seems to be pretty steady or come in and out, or you might have to buy organic or something like that. But yeah, I guess Brooklyn's freezers are full of chicken right now.
So what other fresh things should we buy right now? Like what lasts the longest and what's the most processable and all of that?
So potatoes are always good. I mean, I would say just start to think in terms of meals, and don't just sort of like go to the store like grabbing things. Try to be okay with maybe eating the same thing a couple days a week. And there's still no reason why you can't treat yourself to takeout once or twice a week either. So the whole ordeal doesn't have to be too overwhelming. We're talking about maybe making 2 dinners per week, eating that twice, so that's already 4 days, ordering in like another 2 days, and then maybe throwing something together on Sunday, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So towards that end, like I would say have pasta on hand, have rice on hand, because virtually anything can go over that stuff. Like I might make like a lasagna tomorrow or something like that. Just I think it's comfort food time. I don't know if anybody else could use some.
What's your comfort foods? What are your comfort go-tos?
Lasagna's up there. I mean, so far they're all over the place. Like we did a Thai curry last night that felt great because it was very like almost takeout and and you know, just like a mix of just veggies and protein and everything good. You know, make mac and cheese, stuff like that. And the thing is, to store stuff longer, this is like another thing. Try to store components separately because they'll usually last longer than when they're already mixed all together. So I'll make like the cheese sauce for mac and cheese and I'll blanch pasta and like keep those separate. And you just like throughout the week when you want some, you just like mix them together. But if you mix them together and made a big batch, by day 2, it's like mush, you know, it's like
that's fascinating.
Yeah,
and for those of you watching, the first time I really got to know Virginia was when we started going to Burning Man together. And the first year she came, she took over our cooking operation, and I was just so impressed. It's little pieces like this that I think, I'll speak for myself as a very insecure cook. I really feel like there's so many basics I don't know, and little things like that, of the fact that you can keep the cheese sauce away from the pasta is pretty brilliant. Okay, that's really helpful.
Yeah, think about sort of like reheating things and how things that reheat better, things that don't. And if they don't reheat well, maybe even keep them raw. Like the other day, I made a stir fry, and stir fry I feel like reheats horribly because it's such a quick cook that all the vegetables turn brown and get overcooked if you try to reheat it. So I did all the prep for 2 nights in one night because everything was already out. So I cut all the broccoli, cut all the chicken, cut all the tofu, but I split them in half and kept everything raw for like day 2. So that it didn't feel like a leftover and it didn't feel like punishment, that sort of thing. Or what we actually did, this is more complex, is the same group of ingredients, chicken, tofu, broccoli in this case. One day we made more of like a Chinese takeout style brown sauce stir fry. The next day we used those same ingredients because I had coconut milk and Thai curry paste, and we made a Thai curry. And so they were totally different dinners, even though they were like virtually the same main ingredients.
Yeah.
And over rice, because everything goes over rice now.
That is awesome. And you're also a parent. You have Reno, who is a year and a half now?
18 months, yeah. 18 months, like a week ago, I guess.
Yeah. So do you all eat the same thing? How do you deal with that in your house as a chef?
He's starting to get harder now, but we did, if it's available and you're a parent, it is just smart to have some shelf-stable stuff around for the kiddos. We like stocked up on packets and got some shelf-stable milk and stuff like that, but that's just like a way, you know, as long as milk is available, we'll keep buying milk. That's just like in case one day it isn't there.
Shelf-stable milk. I didn't think about that. That's a good idea.
Yeah. And it's like selling out places, but I really feel like stuff is sort of calming down now. Like everyone who overbought is sitting, you know, they're not going to keep overbuying. You overbuy once or twice, you know, it's not. Yeah, I guess.
Have you met Americans?
We'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, luckily he's young enough that he just thinks we're all hanging out at home all day. He's like having a blast and he doesn't notice anything. And, you know, we stock up on things we know he eats more of. His favorite thing on earth is smoked salmon. So we have a bunch of lox in the freezer.
So random.
But he loves avocados, bananas, a lot of kid things. Cheerios are shelf stable. But we have what I did when he was a baby and he ate puree, but we still do puree sometimes because he suddenly won't eat vegetables and stuff like that. I make purees out of stuff as it's ripe or as we have to get rid of it, and then I pour it into ice cube trays. And so another thing about storage that I want to say is set yourself up for ease later. So like I made a huge batch of marinara sauce or a huge batch of soup. I don't want to necessarily store it in like one big pot in my fridge, or I'm never getting that in my freezer or anything like that. If you break things up into like something you can just quickly pull out that's like enough for 1 or 2 dinners, then that's like ideal and you won't have this big mess later, especially in the freezer. Like if you do something like buy, you know, 5 pounds of ground beef to get ahead, you don't want to freeze 5 pounds of ground beef because then you have to defrost 5 pounds of ground beef. Yeah. So if you like break it up into pounds or 2 pounds or whatever is like a reasonable portion for you, you can just take what you need and it's not like this big, huge hassle later. So like a little bit of time and organization and stuff up front always helps. Dating always helps. But anyway, so we take the puree at ice cube trays because the whole reason is that then you get these sort of little portions. And so I don't have to defrost like a whole quart of applesauce or something. I just have a few little cubes. Always have some peanut butter on hand, something like that. And I mean, for kids, they're so easy. They don't need something to be a meal per se, you know, like it doesn't have to have a name. You can cook some pasta and throw some sauce and black beans in there and it's fine, you know, whereas adults it would be kind of be like, what is this, you know, because it doesn't have a name and it's not like a dish. But kids are resilient, and as long as you have like a few. He gets a couple extra cookies now than he normally would have, but
me too.
Don't we all?
Exactly. And what about storage? You know, my New York City fridge is like half the size of other people's fridges. Yeah. So where are you storing everything in Tupperware? Do you have any other strategies?
So first off, whatever container you bought it in is probably horrible. I know burners will know a phrase called like demooping or something, but basically the first thing you want to do when you get home is remove a lot of the external packaging. Take pictures of directions or timelines on the packaging if you need something like that. But otherwise, throw out all the cardboard, throw out all the bigger bags, and you may even want to break down what's inside too. Like flatten things into Ziploc bags and like stack them up. That sort of thing works like way better than just one big thing in the back. I personally have all these sort of like those takeout wonton soup containers, like plastic soup containers. Things that stack are great. You'd be shocked how much you can stuff your freezer and it still freezes. I've been shocked by that at least. So the fridge I'd say needs a touch more airflow than the freezer for some reason. Freezers seem to work no matter how packed they are. I also overloaded my freezer because I went a little crazy making all the soup in the world like the first week. So something I've been doing that's been working really well is I discovered that when you take something out of the freezer and put it in the fridge, it takes like days to defrost. I didn't discover this, but I realized it as I was doing this. And so I've been rotating stock in and out of the freezer. Into the fridge and then back again on about like an every 3-day cycle. So I'll spend about 2 days in the fridge, 1 day in the freezer. And it never melts beyond say about like 80% in the fridge. So it still is pretty frozen. And you know, it's well outside of the danger zone. Like as long as your fridge is, below 40 or something, you're fine. So I don't know if it'll last like forever like that. We'll find out. But for the time being, when you make a big batch of chili and you go to freeze it, or you make a big batch of marinara sauce, something like that, freeze it really rock solid, and then it can be moved to the fridge sort of safely to make more room for the more things that you're buying and cooking.
Yeah. That's awesome. I need to start doing that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
And
we
then,
had
like,
to
how
discover.
long do things tend to last in the freezer? Like, when should we start eating all the stuff we've
if they're
cooked?
stored well, like if you have a vacuum sealer, things could go on for years. Basically, you want the least amount of air involved. So that's why like Ziploc bags are good, because you can suck out most of the air and make like a nice tight seal. And even things that sort of go wrong in the freezer won't necessarily make you sick, or they haven't gone bad. They're just gonna defrost kind of funky. So like that's something like you know, when someone gets not frostbitten, what's it called? But freezer burn. Like when someone gets freezer burn, it's not gonna make you sick or anything. Like you could still throw the chicken in some chili or something like that. It just like when you cook it up, it may have a spongy texture or like something like that because it got too exposed to air, too much frost built up, and it's screwed with like the moisture balance. Totally. So the better the seal, the better. Label and date everything so you can eat the oldest stuff first. And everything, I always like shove stuff in the freezer and I'm always like, oh, I don't know what it is. And then I have this like quart of red sauce that could be anything from like tacos to marinara. I don't know. So everything looks alike in the freezer. So trust me, just label it, put on the date. It's just like very satisfying to have everything like ready to go and lined up.
It's so good. It's so good. I feel like I'm a million miles behind, but it's very, very helpful.
Yeah, well, it looks like we might have a couple of months to catch up. So no worries.
Yeah. Oh, Virginia, this was so helpful. Can you tell people where they can find you and your work?
Sure. I have, let's see, the website isn't up yet. So either this Instagram account, like just message me in the little like airplane in the corner, or on Facebook, I'm on Facebook, like the user page is You Should Learn to Cook. And that's where I post mostly daily, like tips and things, as we're encountering it too, you know, but basically how we're handling quarantine in hopes that it helps others.
I think that's where we all are right now.
Yeah.
Everyone's figuring it out. No one knows what they're doing. I believe that about life in general, but I think in this moment it is exceptionally true. So thanks for coming on today and talking about food and cooking. It's been really, really helpful.
Yeah,
I will go make some dinner that is something beyond boxed mac and cheese.
Yes. Yes, I'll throw up a good mac and cheese recipe tomorrow.
Oh, please do. Okay. All right. Much love, VA. Bye, Virginia.
Bye.
Okay, thank you all so much for being here. Again, this is Talk About Talking. If you have something that you think we should talk about, please DM me, send it over. And if you want to come on to talk about something, I'm looking for guests. So I'm going to be doing this every few days. The next one is next Wednesday, April 1st at 5 o'clock right here to talk about being present in this strange moment. I'll be on with Kathleen Stetson and Abigail Soma. I'm really looking forward to it. And thank you all for joining me today. Okay, bye.